But we are shifting today, and we're starting a brand new series called Uphill Habits. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments, but we just finished, obviously, 2018. We just made our trip around the sun, and this month is an incredible time for us to turn the page and to look forward into the future. And how we turn the page really matters. How we set the direction of our life right now in this moment really matters, and it has the potential to change everything. And I'm not even really talking about New Year's resolutions, because we all know those normally don't work. You know, we think, hey, I'm going to get in shape. That's why the gym is so crowded this time of year. You complain because you go to the gym and there's no parking places, which is a little bit odd, because you complain because you had to walk farther to get to the gym, to walk on the treadmill. But just wait till February. You can park anywhere you want, right? Because it'll be empty. I'm not talking about New Year's resolutions. I'm talking about setting our lives in a direction toward God for this year that could make all the difference. It could lead us into brand new territory. And if we don't seize this moment, if we don't take hold of it right now, in 4 or 5 months or another trip around the sun, we'll just be the same people, only a little bit older. And I think, I don't know about you, but I want something new and fresh for my life this year, and I want that for my family, and I want that for you. I want us to be open to what God may have for us. So in light of that, why don't we pray and ask God to speak to us tonight? I know that in this room there are people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, perspectives. There are some of you who you come to church here every week. There are others of you that came with a friend tonight. Others of you are giving God one more chance. Some of you are carrying very, very heavy things tonight. But why don't we just pray and ask God to give us His words, His encouragement, His challenge tonight. So if you're open to hearing from God, I invite you to pray the simple prayer that we pray every week together as a church. If you're new, just a quiet, simple prayer between you and God, something like this. Jesus, would you please speak to me tonight? Because I'm listening. And then would you pray for somebody else? Because, you know, it's not all about you. It's about us together as a community. Would you pray for somebody else? Maybe somebody you're seated beside, somebody you came to church with tonight. A very simple prayer for them, something like this. God, please talk to this person tonight and give them the faith and courage to respond to you. Yeah. And God, give those Broncos wisdom as they choose a new coach, because they need it. In Jesus' name, amen. They need it. It's good to see everybody. When you came in tonight, you received a bulletin, and inside that bulletin is a little message note-taking outline. You can fill out some things, write a few things down, take a few notes, and I really want to encourage you to do that. I always tell people that your expectation determines your experience, and when we lean in with the posture of a learner and we write some things down thinking that God is going to speak to me, I really believe your experience will be different tonight. I don't know about you, I remember things better when I write them down, so we give that to you almost every week. And then I always tell people as well, you might not need it tonight, but you might need it some other time. So take it, stuff it in a little drawer somewhere, put it in a notebook. I'm just amazed at the stories that people tell me of bringing their outlines back out at certain times in their life and just remembering certain certain verses that really mattered to them, and they came out at just the right moment in time. In fact, somebody wrote me a little note this past week. I thought it was pretty outstanding, that she takes the notes and the outlines and she kind of writes some extra thoughts and transcribes the message a little bit, and then sends it to someone that she knows that's incarcerated, a good friend of hers that is incarcerated, and he reads them and studies them and then does a Bible study with the inmates on his cell block out of the notes that we share here at Journey. So isn't that just amazing that God just takes and multiplies those things? You never know what you might need. So write a few things down and encourage yourself tonight. We are walking into this season of the year something we call 21 21 days of prayer and fasting. And we've been doing this for a long time together as a church, where we start the beginning of the year, the first 3 weeks of the year, with this dedicated, devoted time of prayer and seeking God. Just really asking God, what do you want to do in my life in 2019? What do you want to do in my life in this fresh new season? What do you want to do in my family's life? What do you want to do in the life of our church? It's just this big openness of saying, everything before me is blank. And so, God, what would you like to lead us into? Because some of us we're going to have the best year of our life. Some of us are going to have the most challenging year of our life. We don't know what's coming, so we lean into God to say, what do you want to do in my life this year? And we believe this, that a productive life begins with a prepared heart. Go ahead and write that down if you're taking notes tonight. A productive life begins with a prepared heart. Getting myself open to God, preparing myself for what might be next. And our theme verse for this year, for the 21 days of prayer and fasting, is Isaiah 26:8. On your outline, it says Isaiah 6:8, but that was just a little typo on my part. Could you just put 2 in front of the 6, 26:8? And here's what I want to encourage you to do. Every single one of us to circle that verse, and I want to encourage you to read that verse, those few words, every day for the next 21 days. I want you to take it out, maybe type it out, put it on your phone, take a picture of it, pull it out from different times, and I want you to pray that verse, read that verse every single day for 21 days. It's an amazing confession and prayer, and it begins like this with these 2 words, yes, Lord, which is an unbelievable prayer. Which is an unbelievable confession to say, yes, God, whatever you want for me, the answer is yes. It might be challenging. It might be different from what I think I need, but yes, Lord, I need something bigger in my life than just me. I need something bigger on my plate and on my agenda than just the things that I'm thinking about. I need your perspective. It says that we're walking in your truth, learning your ways. We're eagerly waiting for you, God, because your name and your renown are the desire of our souls. I memorized this verse when I was in college because I was a part of a college Bible study called 722 in Atlanta. A guy named Louis Giglio was teaching that, and he was just beginning to teach these verses, and a bunch of college students were memorizing that, and that birthed into a movement called Passion. And some of you have been around the church for a little while, and you've heard Christian music by guys like Chris Tomlin and David Crowder and some other guys like that. That all was born out of these days of this Bible study. And we were just college students who were hungry for God and praying this simple prayer. Yes, Lord, whatever you want for our lives, we want something bigger. So that's what 21 Days for Journey is all about. Just coming before God and say, what do you want in my life? What do you want in my family? What do you want for my finances, for my marriage, with my kids, with my next career move? What do you want, God? I'm open for that. We're also praying that as a church. Our simple strategic strategy as a church is to, as leaders, pray and ask God, what do you want us to do next? We just want to build people. We just want to lift people. We just want to speak life. We just want to help people take their next steps with God. And there are a lot of people in our community who need to do that. A lot of your friends and neighbors and family members. And we say, God, how can we be a part of that? And for 12 years, as long as I've been the pastor here, we've been praying that together. God, what do we need to do next? And so our church keeps growing. And you're here on a Sunday evening, and there's lots of people here, and it's wonderful. This morning we were in overflow. In at least one of our services, people were parking all out in the weeds. We had over 3,000 people here for our Christmas services. So we're praying, God, what do we do next? And so we invite you to come and pray that with us. Lord, how do you want to use us to help reach our community? As a part of this 21 days, we always take up a little bit of fasting. And fasting, quite simply, is this: to refrain from an appetite for a specific time for a spiritual purpose. And every time fasting is mentioned in the Bible, it always has to do with food, like going without food or a certain kind of food for a certain period of time for a spiritual purpose. And you're saying, hey, I have this appetite for this thing, but I'm going to go without that. I'm going to say no to that so I can say yes to something else. And so throughout the 21 days, many people who are a part of our church, and in the past years, many of you have participated in this if you've been around for a while, but if you're brand new, People will take opportunities to fast certain meals. Sometimes people will fast from 6 in the morning to 6 at night and say, hey, I'm not going to eat anything during the day. And every time I'm hungry, it's just going to remind me that I'm hungry for God. I'm hungry for what could be next in my life. And every time I feel that physical hunger, I'm going to say, God, I want you in my life more than that. Also, people sometimes will fast from certain specific foods. Some people will say, hey, I'm not going to do sugar or bread. If you don't love Jesus, you'll say, I'm not going to do meat, things like that. Just kidding. If that offends you, this probably isn't your church. And so certain kinds of foods, say, hey, I'm not going to do that over 21 days. I'm just going to abstain from that. Sometimes people do certain activities that feed our other appetites, certain media. A lot of people in our church take off 21 days from social media. Say, I'm not going to do Instagram or Facebook for 21 days, Twitter, whatever, because we really don't realize how many times we pick up our phone to look at that. We really don't realize how often that has just become our reflex, even at a stoplight, or we just grab it. And so here's what I encourage people to do, is to delete those apps from your phone for 21 days, put a little message on your social media, say, hey, I'll be back, I'm not disappearing, I'm okay, I'm taking 21 days off to seek God. I need an intervention, somebody help me, something like that. But you take that time off, and here's what I encourage people to do, is to take that notes feature on your phone, whatever you use for that, and type a couple of prayers or a couple of bullet points of things that you're praying for, a verse that you're trying to memorize. And every time you're tempted to pick it up and look at the Instagram, the Instagram, that sounded so old, right? Do your parents do? I saw that on the Facebook. And so anyway, now I end up saying it. But just pull it up and go, hey, I'm going to read this verse. These are a couple of things that I'm going to go pray through instead of that. Because here's what we're saying, is my hunger and thirst for God is greater than my desire for, and you fill in the blank. There is no blank. It's what is my hunger and thirst for God is greater than my desire for this food, this activity, this thing that I absolutely think I need in my life. I want this more than, I want you, God, more than this. And it's different for everybody. It's something that calls to us and grabs for our attention. It's different for everybody. One year, our kids pastor, Molly, she loves to run. She's so weird. And so she loves to run, and she fasted from running. And I said, me too. For 20 years, I have been fasting from running. And we would see her walking really fast down the hall because she wanted to run so bad. But I don't know what it is for you, but to say, God, I'm pushing out all the distraction, and I want to hear your words from me. So to pivot today, we're starting this new series that we're going to be in for the next 4 weeks together, called Uphill Habits. So all throughout the 21 days of prayer and fasting, we're going to be talking about what it looks like to develop uphill habits in our life. And here's the big idea behind this series, is that most people have uphill hopes but downhill habits. Do you know what I mean by that? That we all want our lives to look better in this area or that area, but the choices that we're making on a daily basis aren't setting us on a trajectory to get there. If we take inventory of our habits and what we're actually doing, it's not leading us down the path to where we actually want to be. We have uphill hopes, but we have downhill habits. So we need to, as a people, develop some uphill habits. And we all have habits. Every one of us. I'm not saying you need to start habits. You already have them. So I'm talking about instituting some different kind of habits that will lead you to the place that you want to be. When you shave, guys, you look in the mirror, and whether you realize this or not, we all start in the same place every time. You grab your razor, and just think about it. The next time you shave, it's right here for me every time. The way you brush your teeth, how you drive to work, how you get ready in the morning, how you fix your coffee. We all have habits in our life, but are the bigger habits, not those little ones. The bigger habits and choices in our life, are they leading us where we want to go? Look at this theme verse for us. It's out of Proverbs chapter 4. This is Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, writing to his son, and he says these very practical words. Look straight ahead, fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on that safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. Now, he's talking about a lot of things there, but what he's talking about is a path, is a group of choices, habits. And you understand this, like we make our habits and then they make us. What we do repeatedly over and over and over again is who we are. And so to change the course and direction of our life, in order to do that, we have to change what we repeatedly do. Now, this is where we get in trouble. Listen, this is so important. It's so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small choices on a daily basis. Meaning that we fall into the trap of thinking that it will be the miraculous that changes our life, this moment. Like we won the lottery, man, and that changed everything. But it has been my experience in my life and in helping people follow Jesus that our change doesn't happen in the miraculous, it happens in the mundane. It doesn't necessarily happen in the inspirational moments. It happens in the intentional moments, day in and day out. It's the small things that nobody sees that determines the life that we all are looking for, the big results. It's the tiny tweaks that lead to the giant peaks in our life. It's these little things that we do day in and day out. One of the great examples of this would be getting married. When you have the wedding, it's an amazing moment, right? I mean, we spend sometimes a year in advance, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars for this, moment. But that doesn't make a marriage, right? It's a 1,000 choices day in and day out to love one another and forgive each other and have fun and fight and make up and come together and choose the right things. Like that's how we actually change. I've been reading this book. I highly suggest it. It's called Atomic Habits, and it's about how we develop habits in our life. It was really helpful for me. And there was this little chart in the book, and it was about the power of tiny gains. They somehow charted what it would look like if you just made 1% improvement every day, just 1% better in a little area of your life, what that would look like over the course of a year. And the compounding effect of that is after a year, making just a 1% improvement in a small area of your life would lead to a 37% improvement at the end of that year. In other words, the little things that we do that no one would notice, that aren't notable, end up being the things that a year later people go, wow, you are really different. You know, you look really great. You seemingly are in a better place. And so this year, one of my goals is to be a little bit healthier, probably yours too, and, lose a little bit of weight. I had a goal to lose 15 pounds last year, and I still have 20 to go. So, I don't know about you. It's like I'm either like on the train, like I'm eating almonds and broccoli, or I'm eating cake in the shower. There's just no in between for me. So I try to be on the train, but there's one, like if just a little bit of improvement makes a massive difference. And if you go out for lunch and you have a little cheap meal or something like that, it doesn't make that big of a deal. It doesn't tip the scale. But if you do that every single day for lunch, it adds up over time. And the same thing is reversed, right? We have a healthy choice. We get that when it comes to our lives. These little choices make an enormous difference. I was also reading that if you are on a flight from LA to New York and you take off, and the pilot upon takeoff adjusts the nose of the plane just 3 degrees south, that when you fly across the country, you'll land in Washington, D.C. rather than New York, hundreds of miles apart. Just, you would never notice the nose of the plane moving 2 or 3 feet, but over the course of time, it makes a massive difference. If I was to bring out an ice cube and place it here on the table, and we were to imagine that in this room, it was 25 degrees. I took out a piece of ice, put it on the table. It's 25 degrees, it's cold, you can see your breath. But then we started to raise the temperature. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. There would be absolutely no difference. But when we went to 32, no one could tell the difference, but something began to change, right? On a molecular level, the ice begins to melt. It was the 1 degree that made all the difference, and no one else would notice, but if you came back, in an hour or so, that ice is melted. And so it's the same with the choices that we make in our life. So I want to give you a habit tonight. We're going to go over 4 over the next few weeks. But tonight I want to begin with this one, and that's habit number 1, the habit of first, the power of priority. Like what we do first, the order, it matters. What we do first, what we place as supreme importance in our life really, really matters. And of course, I'm going to tell you tonight that you should put God first. I want to say just with boldness and authenticity, if you want your marriage to be better, you should put God first. If you want your career to be better, you should put God first. If you want your parenting to be better, you should put God first. If you are looking for a mate and you're saying, hey, I'm single, I'm looking for the person to spend my life with, the number one thing you could do is to stop looking for somebody else and start putting God first. If you want to improve financially in your life, putting God first. These things in order matter. I want to show you this little verse, and it's in the book of Haggai in the Old Testament. I know you probably all read that earlier today and probably have it memorized. But if you don't, we're going to have it here on the screen for us. Haggai chapter 1. And let me just set the scene for you. The people of Israel, the nation has been ransacked, and they were taken off in captivity to Babylon, and now they've returned, and they've started to rebuild the city, but the temple of God has not been yet rebuilt. They've ignored that and just gone about their business and their own agendas. And then it says this message comes from Haggai to the people, and it says, this is what the Almighty says, the Lord God. He says to them, you keep saying the time has not yet come to rebuild the house of the Lord. In other words, they keep putting it off, rebuilding the temple. But then the Lord sends a prophet to them. He says, but why are you living in luxurious homes while my house lies in ruin? This is what the Lord God says. He says, look at what's happening to you. And then he goes on to describe some of the consequences of not putting God first. He says, you have planted much, but you harvest little. You eat, but you're not satisfied. You drink, but you're still thirsty. You put on clothes, but you can't keep warm. Your wages disappear as though you were putting them in pockets filled with holes. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Look what's happened to you. Why is this happening? Because my house lies in ruins. He says very clearly to them, you've been focused on all different kinds of endeavors and pursuits, but you have ignored the things of God. And you wonder why you're not satisfied. And several of us, maybe in this room tonight, you have chased all kinds of things. You've chased prosperity, success in business, family, riches, all different kinds of pleasure. And as you pursued those things, you still wonder, why am I so dissatisfied? Like, why am I not content? And quite simply, it's because you were created to be in a relationship with God. There is a vacuum, there is a void that can only be filled by God. And when we're out of order, when we don't have God in that place, when we don't have God first in our lives, all of those other things, and look, every one of those things we read are not bad things. He didn't say, hey, you're on drugs. He didn't say, hey, you're blowing it by doing all kinds of sins. Every one of those things he listed are things we all do every day. He's saying none of those things can truly satisfy you unless God is first in your life. So I'm going to encourage you tonight to put God first in everything. Everything. And I want to give you some really, really practical ways to do that tonight, to set up a habit to put God first in your life. I grew up not going to church. And when I started going to church, I was about 16 years old. Some of you in this room might be about that age. I started going to church, and the pastors would get up and talk, and they would preach, and they would say, you know this story, or you know this verse. And I was like, no, I don't. I do not know. And they would say things, and I would go, I agree with that, but I don't know how to do that. Do you understand what I mean? Like, I would even write in my Bible, like, YBH, yes, but how? Yes, but how? How do you do that? Yes, that sounds great. And sometimes I'm so afraid that people come to Journey and they go, that's amazing. And they get inspired and they leave and they don't know how to actually do that. So I work really hard to try to give us some very practical ways to do it. What is it? That sounds great to put God first in your life, but how do you actually do that tomorrow morning? And so I want to give you a couple of 4 big ideas. And the first one is this, is that I want to give God and put him first the first of my year. And we've already talked about that a little bit, and that's why we spend so much time talking about 21 days of prayer and fasting. At the beginning of the year, our culture sets apart the new year to say, hey, we're turning the page. We're moving on to something new and fresh and different. And it is an opportunity right now to look over your year. And we've talked a lot about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But to look over your year and to say, God, what could you do in my life? What could you do in my life in 12 months? I think you would be remarkably amazed if you surrender your life to Jesus over these next 12 months. We overestimate what can happen. We overestimate what can happen in the short term, and we underestimate what can happen in the long term. So just moment by moment, day by day, this year, what could that look like? Of looking out over my year. And so what does that look? I'm asking you, if you're part of Journey, go all in on this 21 days. Go home tonight and decide, okay, for the next 21 days, I'm going to read that email that comes out from the church. I'm going to read those scriptures. I'm going to pray, and I'm going to take some moments. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go through that. I'm going to do my best to be here at these Wednesday nights of prayer. I'm going to come, and I've never been to a prayer. Maybe you've never been to a prayer meeting before. Maybe you went to one that was weird, and you're like, I don't know if I want to go to that. It's not going to be weird. We don't do weird here at Journey. We really try to stay away from weird. We try not to be the mall kiosk people. Do you know what I mean by that? So that they're just like, okay, I'm going to leave that there. So maybe you work at the mall kiosk. I don't want to offend you. So just come to those Wednesday night prayer times. Corey and his team do an amazing job setting it up for it to be open to seeking God, being here for this series, and then choosing something to fast from. I just can't tell you how many of my friends in my circle did this for the first time last year, and it was revolutionary. Some of them gave up alcohol or social media or certain foods. Some of them fasted for days at a time because they needed to hear from God. And so what would it be like if you received the direction that you need? So here's the second one. It's the first of my month. And here's what I mean by this. One of the most spiritual tools that you have in your arsenal is your calendar. And so to sit down with your calendar, if you're married, sit down with your spouse, look at it together as a family, because you can tell me, listen, you can tell me what's important in your life, but if I look at your calendar, I find out what's really important. I find out where your priorities really are. Also, the other tool is your bank account. If you look at your bank, you can tell me what's important to you, but what we spend money on and how we spend our time really tells the story of what's important to us. So here's what I encourage you to do. This is what my wife and I do almost every month. We sit down and we look out over the month and we say, what are the most important things for us when it comes to our relationship with God and specifically to our relationship to each other? It's sometimes called the big rocks. We put the big rocks in first so that other things don't crowd that out. Sit down and look at it. We have a Google Calendar that we share. We go back and forth. This is very practical. We sit down at a table and go, what do you have going on this month? What do you have going on? What do our kids have going on this month? And then we lock in some things and we say, these are things that are just non-negotiables for us. Like we're going to be in church, which doesn't surprise you because I'd probably get fired if I didn't come on Sundays. But but what if you did that? What if you said, these weeks out of this month, we are going to be at church. Another one for us, and it's a very spiritual practice, we call putting God first in our marriage. There's some times we're going to pray together, but then very, very specifically, almost every single Friday of our life, for 20 years of our married life, my wife and I have had a date lunch, date at night, but that day set aside for our marriage. And specifically when our kids got a little bit older and went to school, and my day off is Friday. So that's the day we spend together. And can I give you a little secret? They're rarely exciting. They're just not. And if you've been married for any amount of time in here, you know what I mean. It's just, hey, we're going to get up, we're going to go work out, we're going to go to lunch somewhere, and then we're going to go to Costco. Because that's what you do when you're married. No matter how long you've been married, you end up at Costco, and if they got good samples, it's a great date day, and it's a cheap date day. But listen, this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. We overestimate the big, like, earth-shattering moment, and we minimize the day in, day out things. And so over the course of 20 years, 50-something times a year, we're together in these little date moments where we're talking to each other without kids, normally about our kids, because that's what parents do. But we're saying, hey, I love you. And they were putting God first in our marriage. And she just can't keep her hands off me all week. And I'm like, hey, let's just wait till Friday. Come on. I'm not a piece of meat. I got feelings, And so things like that. All of you husbands know that is a lie. It's a lie. So, all right, here we go. The first of the week. The first of the week is something that I want to make sure, this is how I put God first in my life. This is how I have the habit of first and priority. Did you know that Christians worship on Sunday? One, because Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday, but also because it was the first day of the week for the Jewish calendar. So they ended their week with the Sabbath, and on Saturday, and then Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday. And so they chose the first part of their week to begin their week. And so I would just encourage you to make it a priority for you. If you're a part of a family that comes here, to make it a part of your family's routine and rhythm to be in church. And listen, I say this all the time. I say this in our crash course. We had that earlier today. We had 30-something people in there, and I go in and I tell them, listen, you need to find a church that you absolutely love. You need to find a church that you're so excited to go to, that it's going to be helpful every time you're there. You're inspired. You want to be more like Jesus. You want to serve other people. You're excited to go, and you can invite people to it. And if that's not this church, I pray that you find it. I really do. I want you to find that church, because you owe it to yourself and your family to do that. And then make a commitment to say, we're going to be there. Like, it's part of our rhythm. It's part of us. Like, we want to be a part of what God is doing in the world and making that commitment. What if you did that? You looked out over your calendar and you said, you know what, the first of the week, we're going to do that. My children are a little bit older now. I have a freshman in college, and I have a sophomore in high school, and they have a drug problem. They got drugged to church their whole life. And some of you are like, oh no. No, they and it just wasn't an option. Now, obviously, this is what I do. You're like, of course, right? But that's what we do together as a family. And so we did our best to build the right environment so that they loved it, and it built something into them. I just encourage you to do that as a family. The last one, maybe the most important one, is the first of my day. The first of my day. Have you ever had this thought, this like dawning on you thought, that the fact that you wake up in the morning is a gift? You ever had that thought before? Like, you came out of unconsciousness and you began to breathe air and to think again and get ready for the day. That is a gift. That's what the psalmist means by, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Some of you even memorized that verse. That's waking up in the morning going, I'm alive. God's got something for me. If I'm still breathing, God's got something for me today. And it's waking up in the morning, in the beginning of your day, and saying, thank you, God, for life. What do you want to do in my life today? It's taking a few minutes every morning before you get started to center your life on God. And for me, this is what it looks like. I get up early, not because I want to. I'd sleep till 10 o'clock every day if I could. But I get up every morning early because it's a habit. It's a discipline. So 5 or 5:30 every morning I get up. And so I want to spend time with Jesus before I do anything else. It's the most important thing that I have to do. And not just because I'm a pastor. You hear me? because every single one of you have massive responsibilities. Every single one of you have a life that God has gifted and he wants to use in an amazing way. And so getting my heart centered on Jesus matters. And so I'll pray a little bit and read a little bit of the scripture because I want to set my mind on the things of God, because I'm walking out my door into a world where there are a lot of weird people. A lot of crazies. A lot of things are going to come this way and that way. I've got to make choices and decisions. I'm going to have to respond. And I want God's perspective before I even walk out the door. As a result of that, I've read through the Bible every year for a little over 17 years. Like just seeking after God every year, reading the Bible all the way through, just asking him to speak to me, just spending 15 or 20 minutes in the morning because it matters. Look at this verse. I think you should circle it, underline it, memorize it. It just says, let me hear, God, of your unfailing love. Come on, each morning, for I'm trusting you. Show me where to walk, for I give myself to you. What an amazing verse. Every single morning, I want to meet with you, God. I want to know your word. I want to know where you want me to go. So I want to teach you a little something as we close tonight. Just a big idea. It's don't be alarmed. I have an axe. My wife brought this in this morning. She got a lot of weird looks. I want to teach you something this evening called the Rule of Five. The Rule of Five. I heard this many, many years ago and adopted this in my life. I heard it from the leadership guru expert, John Maxwell, who was a pastor before he started speaking to all these business leaders and writing all these books. And he calls it the Rule of Five. And I want you to imagine that you have a giant tree in your backyard that needs to come down. It's big and it needs to come down. And you go out into the backyard and you grab your axe and you walk out to the tree and you swing it. 1, 2 chops, 3, 4, 5. Some of you are impressed that I know how to use an axe. So 5 times. And then you put it down. And then you go inside and you go about your day, and then you come back the next day and you grab your axe and you swing at it. 1, come on, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you just keep coming back every single day, swinging your axe at that tree. And here's my promise. It doesn't matter how big the tree is. If you keep coming back every single day and swing your axe, not 15, not 50, not 500 times, 5 times. Eventually, come on, that tree will fall. If you have a forest of trees, habits, things that need to change in your life, things that you need to knock down, if you just keep coming back over and over and over again, those things will fall. And it's the same with our lives spiritually. It's about 2 words. It's about intentionality and consistency. It's the key to really everything in life, but it is the key to this first habit. The habit of first, the habit of putting God first, just being intentional and consistent over and over and over again. The Rule of 5. I'm just going to keep showing up. Most of the time, Christians, they fall into the trap of thinking it's all about the inspiration and not the intentionality. That it's all about the spark and not about the grind. But it's in the mud, like it's the sky and the mud. Like it's those things coming together that really begin to change us, to make the biggest difference in our lives. So keep coming back. Your spiritual life is not Amazon Prime. It's not showing up in 2 days, right? You know, it's going to take some moments. It's about building a relationship with God. So to close tonight, I'm going to ask the band to come on up and we're going to pray and we're going to sing one last song together tonight. But as we're gathered here tonight, we just begin to pray. Let me ask you this question. Just a really simple question. Are you looking for a new direction in your life this year? Are you praying and asking God for something fresh and new? And if that's you, I just want you to say a few simple prayers to the Lord tonight. Just say something quietly, simply like this. God, I want what you want for me in 2019. I'm looking for you to do some new and fresh things in my life. I need to hear from you. I'm a little bit desperate. Things like that. Just, God, please speak to me this year. Maybe you've been far away from God for a while, and you're back tonight, and you think, it's a new year, and that's kind of why I'm here. And if that's you, if you say, I've been away from God for a while, maybe you would say a real simple prayer, just honestly before you and God, something like this: God, I've been away for a while. And the best way I know how, I want to come back. I want to start following you. I want to establish some new habits in my life. But maybe you're here tonight and you came with a friend, or you've been coming to church here for a while, and you just realize you don't have a relationship with Jesus. Like, you might have believed in God or a higher power, but you need to start following Jesus. Begin your journey. And if that's you, I just want to invite you tonight to say, I'm ready to get started, God. Just maybe say a simple prayer, something like this: God, I'm ready to get started. Jesus, I believe in you. I believe you lived for me, died on the cross for my sin, rose from the grave. Please forgive me of all the things I've done wrong, all my sin. Come into my life. Help me to follow you.